Hi, my name's Theresa Meuse, and I'm a Mi'kmaw knowledge sharer. And I like to call myself knowledge sharer because I like to share my knowledge, and particularly about our Mi'kmaw culture, about the First Nation culture, about the Indigenous culture on a whole. I'm originally from Oltsacook, which is the Bear River Mi'kmaw community down the valley of Annapolis Valley. I lived there for most of my life and moved to the city when I was in my late 20s to come to university, when I graduated university at the age of 30. And I just stayed here. And so I've made Halifax my home. And now, of course, the Friendship Center is my community because that's where I like to go to get my connection and stay connected with community. I really enjoy many things about our culture, everything about our culture, and I love sharing that because I know that's the way for our future generations to have a better future by having that education out there to shared with others. I'd like to start off by welcoming you to Mi'kma'ki, which is, we like to use our Mi'kmaq word called Ipjalasi. And to just explain a little bit about that word, it means more than just welcome, which you see on the signs. You'll see now on the road signs, you'll see welcome, you'll see Ipjalasi and all others. And so we like to explain, though, what Ipjalasi means because our Mi'kmaq language is a verb-based. It's an action-based words. And so it's important to understand that when we say Ipjalasi, it means more than just welcome. And the story that's told to us is about our elders or our ancestors when they lived in the Wigwams, and you had the fire in the middle of the wigwam. When their company came or the visitors came, the elders would say, Ipjalasi, meaning go around to the other side of the fire because that's where it's going to be the warmest. So when we say Ipjalasi, it doesn't necessarily mean we're going to give you materialistic things. It just means we're going to give you the best we have to offer. And sometimes it's the best seat in the house. So that's why we mean, that's what we mean when we say Ipjalasi. We also like to remember our ancestors for being such great stewards of this land that's allowed us to be here today and to be part of the celebration of the Mi'kmaq people and of course, all Indigenous people across Canada. So we always like to remember our ancestors and especially the elders that still continue to welcome newcomers to our community. And we also like to acknowledge the ancestors who helped guide us and continues to guide us. Even though they're not here with us physically, they're still here with us spiritually, and that's very important for our growth. And we also have another word that's called Insinogama. And that means all my relations, or we are all connected. And we don't mean just connected as humans. We mean connected from everything that Mother Earth provides, from the lands, the waters, the air, humans, animals, plants. We're all connected and we all need each other. And we always like to share this bit of education, is that Mother Earth doesn't need us to survive, but we need Mother Earth to survive. So it's important for us to move forward together, not only as humans, but also with the whole two-eyed seeing approach, which will help us respect Mother Earth and allow there to be a Mother Earth for future generations. Today, I'm going to share with you some education or some teachings on the First Nations Circle. And there may be some components that are related to Mi'kmaq, but I think when it comes to the First Nations Circle, it's quite common that all of us use a circle in some form. And so what I'm going to do is share that along with some Mi'kmaq teachings. And I like to call it a Mi'kmaq teaching. It's not the teaching, because you could have another person come and share other things about the First Nation Circle, and they'll have just as many wonderful teachings to share as anyone else does. So that's why I like to call it a Mi'kmaq teaching. We're going to start off by understanding just about the importance of the circle. And we know that this teaching has been around for a long time. When I started to learn about the importance of the circle and the elders teaching us, it just opened up my mind and my heart and my spirit to this importance and why I like to use the circle. And so we're going to go through a few things here to understand that importance of the connection to the circle. I've read a little bit on different elders who has shared about the circle, as well as just being and sharing circles and hearing elders talk about this. So these are some examples that I've used and picked up along the way. Of course, when we look at what things are in circles, we know Mother Earth is a circle. That's the first and foremost important thing to know. The sun and the moon are circles. The birds make their nests as circles. Our wigwams are circles. The sweat lodges are circles. Even life, we may call it a cycle, but we see it as a circle from birth to adolescent to adulthood to elderhood. And so that's really interesting because we see that as a full circle. Our 4 seasons, we see that as a circle starting in the spring and working our way up to winter. And those coincide also with the life stages as well. So for many of us, when we see the baby born, we say they're in the springtime of their life. Or when a teenager is in the summertime of their life, it's like the best time of their life. Then we get into adulthood and they're in the autumn of their life, and then they reach elderhood and they're in the winter time of their stage of life. So you can see the comparisons with this. The drum is made into a circle, and we look at that as the heartbeat of Mother Earth. Our sacred fires are round. Our traditional dances are always done in the circle. Our talking circles are done in the circle, of course. And even our 24-hour period, or we like to call it the medicine wheel, or our life's journey, is even in a circle, where we start with the dawn, and we go into the day, we go into dusk, and we go into dark. I like to call that the 4 Ds, but it's because it's an easy way to remember the circle, but also that it allows you to understand that 24-hour period. So we see that as a circle. Also, when we look at the circle, we think of it as wholeness. Everything is there. There's no cutoffs. There's no branching out. It makes a circle and it stays that way. So it allows us to understand wholeness or entirety. It includes everything. Also equal. When you're in that circle, everyone is equal. And I think that's a valuable lesson to learn when we look at the circle. The other piece that I think is really interesting is that there's no first and there's no last. And I think when we look at the circle, we look at the circle of life. And even though we may have ups and downs, but we're still walking our circles. And so this is why we use the circle in many of our things, because we know it has such an important education piece in our culture. Another important piece about the circle that I would like to share is this whole concept of smudging. Now, I have my shell here, and it's just an ordinary shell, and I have a lot of sage. That's the one medicine we like to burn because it smells so wonderful, and it also has been proven by scientists to be an air cleanser. And so we like to use that as well. This is what we call white buffalo sage or white sage. It has a wonderful fragrance. There's all kinds of varieties of sages. And when I'm using sage for indoors, I like to use this because of its beautiful scent. I have others, but they don't smell as good, so I will use that outdoors in my sacred fires as offerings. But for burning, I either will use the sweetgrass, which is another piece you could, or another medicine you can make, or you can use the sage. When I'm outdoors, I would light this whole bowl full of sage. I might even have more. We always like to call it a bonfire, but we like to have a big sage going. And then people can really feel like they're cleansing and helping getting rid of the negative energy and bringing in the positive. And so that's what we're used to. And so that's fair enough, but when I think we're looking at institutions or government departments or schools or where have you, there's a little bit of hesitance to allow us to do smudging ceremonies or to light our sage in the classrooms or anything like that, in boardrooms, hotel rooms. And I think the challenge is because they think we're going to light this big pile. But when we really look at ceremony, we don't need to do that. All we need is one single little leaf like this. That's all we need to do to burn. And we light it, and it gives off just very minimal smoke. I might just make one complete circle with it, standing right here. Or maybe before everybody comes, I will just make one big circle around the classroom or the boardroom, what have you. And then I put it out, because you usually don't even need it all. I will also use one piece of sage like this to cleanse my car, inside my house. So you don't always need to be lighting that. And I think when we're looking at two-eyed seeing and trying to encourage people the importance of lighting our sage and doing offerings like this, is to try to encourage them to just use that one little leaf. We don't need to have the big fire or the big smoke going. Now, when we're outdoors, that's a different story. We can have it as big as we want, but it's trying to help people understand more how important that even that least little bit can make in the circle when you're having a circle, and put people in a good frame of mind. So we're going to actually talk about the talking circle. And again, this gets back to a teaching, not the teaching. And I hope that you get the chance to hear other people talk about the circle, because there'll always be other things to learn, and totally encourage that. But the first thing we like to teach about the talking circle is that, of course, it is a formation of individuals. And you can use chairs, or you can just sit on the floor, or pillows, or what have you, as long as you're making that circle formation. And when we say circle, we don't necessarily mean an oval or a egg shape or anything. We really try to have this circle as much as possible. Sometimes it doesn't happen. And I've been in groups where we've had to actually make two circles, where we've made an outside circle and an inside circle. Not that we like to have someone's back to somebody, but we had to improvise because of the large group and the small space. So sometimes you may have to do that when you are having a circle. The purpose of the circle, of course, is communicating and listening to each other and hearing each other and speaking, if that's something you choose to do. One thing, we call it a talking circle, mainly to allow people the opportunity to share a story, or to share something that might be going on in their life, maybe whether it's good or bad, but they would like to share that. There is the opportunity for that art of speaking as well, but also just listening. Some people don't even want to speak. They just want to listen, and that's okay. When the stick comes around, you just take the stick and pass it respectfully on to the next person. Then, with the circle, there is always a lead person. Whether it's an elder or knowledge sharer or whoever it may be. And it doesn't necessarily have to be an Indigenous person. However, if you are dealing with Indigenous circle, well, whether it's in a community or that is your topic, then yes, you should have an Indigenous person being the lead role. But otherwise, you can do this. I have been to schools where the teacher has been the lead, and they would sit around on a Monday morning with the students and allow the students an opportunity to talk about their weekend and how did their weekend go. So it can be improvised and done in different ways. You always, if you attend a circle, but you may have issues, like let's say you're diabetic, for example, you have diabetes and you have to get up in a half an hour and go take some insulin shot. Just go to the elder at the beginning before the circle starts and let them know that you have to do that. Or maybe you have other issues that you can't sit for too long because you have bad hips or ankles or whatever. Share that with the elder and let them know. That's all you have to do, is just let them know ahead of time that you have these challenges, and then they will guide you on the best way to do it. Once the talking circle begins, usually there will be an item selected, and it's usually selected by the leader, and it can be almost anything. We call it a talking stick, but it might be a stone. Like, for example, I brought a couple talking sticks that I like to use. This is one my sister made me for my birthday, and so she decorated it up. And usually, if I use these sticks, I will always share where they came from. And this one I made, this is actually got all kinds of good teachings on it, like humble, patience, hope, strength, truth. So I like to use this in my circles as well. And usually you will always share where your stick has come from or whatever item you're using. And so that's why I like to say this one came from my sister. But this one has a nice story to it as well that I'd like to share. When you're having a talking circle and the stick is being passed around or whatever item you're using, there's a belief that once you get that item in your hand, your brain shuts off and your heart clicks in. And so you may experience for the first time, while you're waiting your turn, your mind is going a mile a minute. Oh, what am I going to say? Oh, I'm going to talk about that. And somebody might say something and you're like, oh, I'll talk about that. Like, you're not even really listening to what people are saying because you're so anxious about what you're going to say. And then you get the stick and then all of a sudden everything's gone. It's just like, oh, I don't know what I'm going to say now, right? And then you just let it happen, and then what they say is only the truths come out. And only your heart will start speaking, so that you may end up saying something altogether different than what you were thinking prior to. And so this stick I really enjoy using because my brother who makes baskets, if you know the process of making a basket, you have to pound down the piece of wood. And in the middle of the wood, in the center of the wood, they call it the heart. So when he would get done making his strips for his basket, he would have this heart piece sitting there not knowing what to do with it. And he said, and he would use it for kindling. And he's like, gee, there's got to be something I can do with this. And he said, oh, I know, I'll start making talking sticks out of it. So he did. And so what's really interesting is the story about how your heart clicks in. It's interesting because when I use this, I know this is the heart of the tree. So I really feel it's powerful when it comes to having a talking circle. So these are two examples of talking sticks. And of course, they can be of any length, any size, any color, any decorations that you can see. Also, we have you can use an eagle feather or a feather. Some will use turkey, some will use pheasant. This one I will use in certain circles. This isn't one that I would bring out a lot. It would depend. If I have my sacred fire and we're doing a circle, I may bring out my feather then because that's a special time and ceremony. Okay. The other pieces that I have, or other things, is that we can use things like stones. That can also be a talking stick as well, or talking item, and it fits nicely in the hand, but it doesn't have to be that shape. It can be any shape you want. You could use a shell. I picked this one up from a beach, so they're pretty easy to get. You don't have to buy anything elaborate. And I should say that mostly people will use talking items that's connected to Mother Earth. I think that's a key thing, and I think helps people to stay more grounded when you do that. I've seen people use other things that isn't associated with Mother Earth, but I think it's important to have the Mother Earth connections. Also, they don't have to be big. It could be just a little tiny feather like this, and that can still be held and passed around. This is just a little pheasant feather with some beads on it. So, like I said, it doesn't have to be anything elaborate. It can be just a tiny little thing. Or perhaps they would like to use something like a sacred, I shouldn't say sacred, this is a wooden flower that's made from the popple wood, so that, again, it's connection to Mother Earth. Or they might want to just use a little package of sacred medicines, and this is, of course, made up of the sweetgrass, cedar, sage, and sweetgrass, cedar, sage, and tobacco. And so sometimes they'll just hold that. Or this is a braid of sweetgrass, and they might use that as a sharing circle or sharing item as well. So it doesn't really matter what you select as long as it's, like we say, we like to encourage that you do it for something connected to Mother Earth, okay? And lots of times they will smudge those as well before the circle, and then they smudge it again after the circle. Okay, so then once we start the circle, sometimes the elders will start a talking circle with a smudging ceremony or prayer offering or other ceremonies. Some will do a sacred pipe ceremony. So it all depends what exactly the circle is for. And I should say that when we have a talking circle, we do see it as ceremony. And the reason we even call it a talking circle versus a sharing circle is because the talking circle has no time frame. It starts when it starts and it stops when it stops. I've been in talking circles that lasted days, and we only stopped for eating, using the washroom, going home to sleep, but we would come right back and get into it again. So they're fun, and you have a lot of great discussions. They don't happen too often, but I've been in circles that lasted for several hours. And so that's the biggest thing about a talking circle, is usually the talking circle doesn't have a specific time frame. The other is the topic that you might share. Sometimes the leader will have a topic, whether it's for healing or whether it's for education or whether it's for the community or whether it's for understanding and educating about Mother Earth. It depends on what that topic is, and it depends on the group that you're in. Sometimes the topic, there may be 2 or 3 different topics throughout that. But usually there is a topic selected. Also, when you get the talking stick, the elder is the first to start, and they will go through the protocols of the expectations for people and what's expected. And then the stick or the item will be passed to the left. So your circle is always going to the left. We always called it clockwise, but we don't use that anymore because of the digital clocks now. But so we just say it goes to the left. Usually, we don't allow any phones or other electronics. However, again, getting back to that where sometimes you have to make some allowances. I've been in circles where it's been medical people, and some of them are on call, or some of them have a family member that's in an emergency way. Not that they would allow their phone to ring, but if it vibrated, they would have to get up and leave. But they already would have told me about that, so I knew if that happened, it was okay. And I would even tell the group that there's some individuals that might have to leave the circle, because that's one thing about the circle, that you try not to break the circle if you don't have to when you're having a talking circle. This is all pertaining to having a talking circle. The other is you refrain from the use of alcohol and drug use. When we say drug use, of course, that means, like, I guess I don't want to say illegal drugs. It's drugs that may alter your thinking, your mind, and that's one of the things that we talk about. And the reason we like to do that, and this is what was always taught to me, is that those things alter your spirit. And when you come into circle or you come into ceremony, you should be coming in with a pure spirit. And when those things robs you of your spirit, you're not coming into the circle in the way that you should be. So we say it's important to refrain from those things. Also, there's a belief that it takes 4 days for that spirit to return back to you after you have been using alcohol or drugs. So that's why you'll hear some protocols will be the no use of alcohol and drugs for 4 days after, or for 4 days before coming to a circle, because we want you to come with full spirit. Now, there's others that will have a different teaching on that, and it will depend on the circle that they need it for. I know I have heard that I knew one elder that did allow someone to come in who had been under the influence the day before, and they were seeking healing. And so the elder allowed them to come into the circle, but the elder also only had people in that circle who was going to be able to help this individual. It wasn't just anybody. So it was a specific circle for this individual. Plus, this individual was told, this was a one-time thing. We'll do this for you now, but if you come this way again, we may tell you to come back in 4 days. So it will depend on the elders as well, but I have seen it change up in that way. Also, there's no pets, and you don't bring your pets, or lots of times children. There are talking circles where I have seen children, but not very often because of that time frame. And because of the topics that's being talked about, sometimes it might be a little heavy for a child. So, but you can have children's talking circles just for the children as well. Then we also say anyone can take part in a circle. Doesn't matter what culture you're from or what the topic is. However, it may be designed for a specific reason. So maybe it's just a circle of women. Maybe it's just a circle of men. Maybe it's just a circle of couples. So it can be specific groups, but overall it can be anyone can be part of that. Also, age and gender. Again, like I said, it usually a children's circle will be separate from an adult's. And genders, like I said, sometimes it will be women, sometimes it will be men, sometimes it will be mixed. Also, food and snacks are always offered, either before or during a break or after for sure. We like to sometimes call it a feast. It's followed by a feast. And during that as well, we always will try to have what's called a spirit plate. So if you do have some snacks, you'll take a little bit. You don't have to have a big plate or anything, but just a little bit of everything that you're serving, and you offer it back to Mother Earth. And what they're saying is you're offering it to the spirits as a thank you for being part of the circle and whatnot. Also, values are upheld. A lot of values were upheld. Things like trust and respect and patience and no foul language and two-eyed hearing and just being very respectful throughout that circle. You don't interrupt somebody, because whoever is holding the stick or the item are the people that are allowed to speak, if they choose to speak. Everyone else must be respectful and listen. So there are many skills that can be very important. I've actually learned my own skill of being patient and having patience, or even trying to raise my memory, because someone might have said something in the circle way over there and I have to wait for that stick to get to me. And sometimes I remember, sometimes I don't. But as far as just waiting your turn, so you have to have that patience. The ceremonies has taught us so many life skills that way, and it still does for anyone that goes into them. The other is that money should not be required for a talking circle, other than maybe for buying your snacks and maybe some water. Or if you've invited certain people to your circle that's come from a long ways, it doesn't hurt to offer them some gas money, or if they had to stay in a hotel, you pay for their hotel, things like that. But as a rule, it shouldn't cost you anything to sit and have a talking circle as a rule. You should be able to just go into them. And again, circles can be used to educate on any topic, or any item, or any topic, any situation, because there's a lot of healing circles that take place, not only for individuals, but we also have things like restorative justice circles. We have, like I said, the healing circles, whether it's for an individual or a community, because sometimes we had a community that just had big losses, like a number of losses, a lot of people passing away in their community, and we knew they just needed a lot of good energy sent to them. So a lot of us would have circles and just try to send them good energy in that way. In-person circles, of course, are the best. I have done them online, and they're not as fun. You definitely have a hard time getting your heart in the right place. And I was leading the circle, so what I would do is everybody was on the screen, and I had everybody's name written down, so I would just go through the list and make pretend that they were in the circle that way. Also, I would have each person get something that had meaning to them from their house. So some would have a picture, some had a feather, some had a stick, some had a little teddy bear. They all had an item, so when it came for them to talk, they held that item. And so that became their talking stick, and we could see it on the camera, so we knew that they were the ones talking. And of course, we had everybody muted as well, so the only one talking. So that was one good thing. We could keep that respect intact that way. But of course, the best way to do a circle is important. Is in together. I think that's one of the key things. They can also be held indoors or outdoors. And Outdoors, of course, will depend on the weather, but I've had them in the winter around the sacred fire. We're all out in our big coats and blankets wrapped around us, and they're really fun. They have so much more meaning, I find, when you're fighting the elements as well. But they're also fun sitting under a big tree in the summer and sitting on the grass. They can still be just as beautiful. And I always say, whenever you can be outdoors to have a circle, that's the place to do it. Although, like I said, sometimes we have to improvise and be inside. So it can be in a classroom, it can be in a hotel room, it can be wherever it's convenient for the group. The other is, the other piece I forgot to mention about the online is it really does prevent total immersion and experience. It is a totally different, it's actually good to maybe experience both, because then you really have it firsthand on what it does feel like to really be in a circle all together versus being online. There is a teaching that says the circle is over when the talking item has made one complete circle and nobody has said anything. That's when the circle is over. And I know this is kind of a little on the humorous side. Sometimes the circle, we're like, it's been, maybe we've been a couple hours doing the circle. So we're all kind of getting a little tired and we need a little break. And the stick's going around and you're like, yes. And then that last person says, I've got to say something. It's like, oh, we have to do it all over again because it has to make that complete circle. And that's when we're doing the talking circle, of course, like I said. And then basically the circle is over when it has made that one pass, but sometimes the elder or the leader may just say, oh, you know what, the circle's over now. And so, or if a lot of people had to leave or they have left, and so, there's different scenarios to why it may have to stop at that point. And again, the one thing is I mentioned is we do try hard not to break the circle. But like I said, if you have to or you think you might have to, always talk to the elder before you do that. Okay, now I'm going to get into a little bit about the sharing circle. As I mentioned, there's a difference between the teachings for the talking circle versus the sharing circle. And what we're seeing more so now in a lot of present day is the sharing circle. And that's because it usually comes with a time frame. So whether it's in the classroom or a school setting or workplace, it's usually you got like 20 minutes or you've got, like I said, it's on a time frame. So that's why we call it a sharing circle. And usually the stick or the item will only go around once in the circle. So we call it a sharing circle, but equally as important. Again, somebody may not want to speak, but they can. The difference between the talking circle and the sharing circle, of course, is, like I said, the item may only go around once throughout the circle. It might go twice, depending on the leader. Sometimes I've said, our circle's just not quite strong enough. I need the stick to go around a second time. Because what happens is some people might be shy the first time around, but the second time they might say something, so it gives them that opportunity. And like I said, it comes with a specific time frame, and it usually when it's going to start and when it's going to stop. We also look at a sharing circle as a way to do introductions for people. It's a great way to do that where they can say their name and share anything they want to share about their personal life or anything going on in their life, or their title of their jobs and things like that, especially when it is in the work environment. It's nice, it's a great way to get to know your colleagues or coworkers that you may not have met before. So it's a great way to get to know them a little bit that way. And of course, during a sharing circle, the participants are free to just come and go. They don't necessarily have to be saying, I've got to do this, I've got to do that. They can just up and go and come back. The only challenge with that is they might miss some good teachings. That's the only thing with that. But the same protocols, though, you still try to be respectful and you listen and you do have the elder and you do have the leader. And so when you're doing the sharing circle, though, you can do it in all kinds of ways. I like to use what I have these animal connection cards, and I like people to introduce that animal connection in their circle. And what I found doing things like that that is it might be somebody who's shy and not really like to talk about themselves, but they don't mind sharing their animal connection card. So there are different ways to do it to get people to be more involved and want to be more involved in the sharing circle. Okay. So that's pretty much it for the talking circle and the sharing circle. And like I said, I like to leave you with the word Insunugama, which I talked about earlier at the beginning, and it means all my relations. And it means everything on Mother Earth is connected. And that's the teaching I'd like for you to think about when you're looking at your circles and having sharing circles or even storytelling, is that we're all here together and we want to move forward. And I think as you move forward, whether it's in partnership building with Indigenous people, or it's just creating more of a trust working relationship, or just making your students feel more comfortable, or having a better relationship with teacher and student, these are great little exercises to do to help you along that journey. Thank you. Igo igande ha igo gwandu dana he. Hey, ego, he got